Steven here, your DS for Richmond Rollercoaster. This course features 3 decisive efforts, 2 coming early within the first third of the race, third about the midway point. If you survive all 3 of these, the front group will be set. Today's video will feature 1 race of mine, 2 from our friend Eric Lee over at Don't Get Drop Cycling. Straight out of the pens, you'll take a left onto Governor Street. This descent is long and steep, and you'll want to make sure to ride everything as easy as possible. Group momentum is king. Nothing is won here, flyers won't stay away, just stay in the bunch. The insane efforts are just around the corner. Today has 3 key efforts and they're all climbs. 23rd Street KOM, Libby Hill KOM, and East Main Street climb. Everything after East Main is flat. The first 2 climbs are steep and short, while East Main is longest of the 3. Looking at 23rd, we can see that it starts gradual with yellow and blue before taking a right. Still in the yellow around 3, moving up to 7, eventually 9, and then 11% near the top. Your goal here is to stay connected. Don't fly off the front, don't fall off the back. Stay right in the middle. Top riders are going to be holding at least 8 watts per kilogram in the highest of categories. Truthfully, power output doesn't matter. Make sure you're positioned. One critical detail, as we get to the top, just before the banner, there's one more 4% kick. Make sure you punch over it and carry your momentum over the top. From here, there will be a downhill recovery on the cobbles. Increased rolling resistance doesn't really matter with how fast you're going. Things will be strung out. This descent is too short for the pack to bunch back up. If you are in the back, you can still use group momentum to move forward. If you need to, use your power up on this next hill. Libby Hill KOM Reverse. Stay in the bunch without sitting in the wind. Momentum will be high here, and the right-hander to the KOM banner is where things get decisive. Start this section in the rear of the bunch. Just before the left-hander, punch hard. Near max effort for only a few seconds. This will make sure that you move up in the group and are positioned well for the second half of the climb. Once you're on the climb, settle into a hard but sustainable effort. Don't blow your engine, but don't be moving backwards in the bunch. The 22% wall here can be a race ender. Tactically speaking, it's going to be as if you're riding into wet concrete. In my race, it seems like I'm still connected to the bunch, but look how fast they pull away from me. I was overconfident and not putting out enough power. Seeing how the gaps open fast, look how Eric takes this climb instead. Starting in the back, pushing up hard, giving a near max effort around the bend, moving up through the pack, safely positioned when things start to flatten. That is how you ride Libby correctly. Once you reach the top, you can ease off the pedals and let the group begin to bunch. Flyers are not going to stay away. If you're gapped like I am, it's almost impossible to push it back up to the group, especially after you move through the banner. And remember, every match you burn here is going to hurt you on the East Main Street climb, the final sorting. Once you crest this KOM, you'll have around 2 miles before East Main Street. Come off the pedals. I like to spin, work out the lactic acid. You could even super tuck if you'd like. If you're in a chasing group, the longer you wait to catch, the harder it will be to do so. Push hard early, and honestly give it all you got to get back on the front. One note, if you're riding solo and a group pushes up behind you in this section, the groups will be quite slippery. Make sure you're pushing watts before they move through you, otherwise you'll be like me, gapped, and burning a match to get back on. The ideal scenario, however, is to recover on this flat 2-mile section. Stay sheltered, there's a few rollers, nothing significant, although the groups will push there. Still, with how flat everything is here, unless you're really trying to get a head start on East Main Street climb, just sit in the bunch, prep your legs for this final sorting. Now I know I've said this a few times, but East Main Street really is the final sorting. After this climb, which is the longest at 1.2k, around 3.8%, it's pan flat. This climb can be broken down into 2 parts. The first section will be primarily above 5%. In the middle, a brief flat, and then finally, a gradual ramp back up to 6.6% near the top. Like with all my climbs, I like to punch at the bottom to try and move up in the group. Working your way through this greater than 5% section is going to be difficult, but you must maintain your power. Stay on the pedals. If you start to be out of position, you'll need to do some extra work in this blue and yellow sections. This is your last chance to fix your positioning unless you're willing to chase the front group on the flats. In those sections, the group momentum from the front will be very difficult to catch. Just up around the bend is another sprint banner. Therefore, if you have a power up, Use it in this section, especially if you're losing positions. When I mean the second section is gradual, I mean gradual. Right before you get to the top, this climb peaks at 6.6%. Your legs are going to be screaming, but you must push through this effort. As you crest, unless there's a group of riders ahead, I would expect the group to slow. You'll not be able to come off the pedals completely, but you'll no longer be pushing red and yellow numbers. If there is a small group ahead, expect the pace to be high. Top riders will not want to let a small cohesive group get to the line on their own. But in all reality, after East Main Street, your primary goal is to sit in. Half of the race still remains. Solo riders, they can't survive that unless they're an absolute diesel engine. As you take a left-hander towards the flat roads of Richmond, Broad Street Sprint Reverse will appear. The sprint is panned flat, but a good rule of thumb with all segments, the pack will surge. If you didn't use your power up on the climb, you can decide to save or burn one. From here on out, the race becomes fairly predictable. The flat favors the diesel engines, and the large groups are extremely hard to bring back. Your first left-hander into the Richmond loop will be re-ridden on the final lap. After a right-hander, there's a brief 3% drag that will stretch the pack. Take notes on how the group reacts here, because I promise you, in the final lap, this is where things will kick off. As you crest over the top, the group will stretch, but it's not enough to snap elastic. Let the group breathe and compress naturally. Don't fight the physics with watts. Soon enough, you'll be met with brick roads and where the final sprint exists. Remember that on these brick roads, rolling resistance increases. Drafting becomes less effective. Solo or small groups can even gain a slight advantage. There's another sprint segment just down the road, so as you work your way around a roundabout, I recommend getting into a nice position. The pace may increase just a bit. Play it safe. Get into position. This is the last time you will go through any banner, so if you want a specific power up for the final sprint, make sure you hold or roll. After the banner, I recommend sitting into the mid to rear of the group. It is here where efficient riding will compound and the additional recovery will make a major difference in your final sprint. If the group begins to stretch, surf the wheels, and if flyers go off the front, don't react. The group will catch them on the descent as things turn back to tarmac. If you're itching for an attack, I recommend waiting for the 3% incline that we noticed a few kilometers ago. As speeds pick up with a -2% descent, we'll continue our circuit and approach the 4% rise in the final 2.3 kilometers. I must reiterate, this 4% rise is not selective, but it is stretching. Attacks here will punish those who have poor positioning. Now I would like to break this finish into two sections. Large and small bunches. First, we will look at the large. In these groups, the final 2.3% drag will hit insanely hard. Whatever you do, don't panic. If you're positioned well, the elastic will not snap. There are very few riders that would be able to hold off an entire peloton from this distance. Instead, ride just as Eric, defensive but not overreactive. We see the group is coming back together before the final kilometer. When you do reach that final kilometer, don't be surprised if a long-range specialist goes all in when the road turns to brick. If you're a rider whose 1-minute effort is the strongest aspect of your racing, feel free to follow such a move. Worst case, you look at the group reacting and you can ease. Best case, you hang onto that wheel and get a free ride into the banner. This is an extremely risky move though. Most of our sprinters are waiting for the last 30 to 15 seconds. Launches begin around the roundabout, but watch how riders are fading. Even the long range attacker is caught before the line. If you can, draft as long as possible, be patient, and wait to give that final dig as late as you can. Let's shift to a race that finishes with a smaller bunch. This is entirely possible given how flat the final sections are. Shifting to our 2.3 kilometer line mark, pace will increase on the climb. But in these smaller groups, the pace very well might slow down substantially as riders jockey for position. This is where Eric's tactics are an absolute masterclass. Things are slow, we're more than 1,000 meters from the finish, but after that slight drag when nobody's expecting, Eric puts in a nice dig. The riders react, Eric notices, and slows down. Those riders then push right past him. We're now less than a kilometer from the finish, and Eric is behind all three riders. perfect place to be in. We switch to the cobbles, Eric's drafting safely, and now is just biding his time for the final move. 400 meters to go, in a comfortable position, Eric uses the group momentum and launches. The aero boost ensures that he's able to get away from the group and the elastic snaps. Now it's just 250 meters and ease legs. Once you have that gap, it's extremely hard for riders to chase you down. Thus, case in point, Eric easily takes the gold as riders give up behind them. Perfectly executed, and these tactics can honestly be utilized on many different race finishes. Keep it in your back pocket. Special thanks to Eric for letting me use his footage. Make sure you check out his channel, and thank you all for joining me on this recon.